Assalamu alaikum. Good evening, everybody. Myself, Sain Sheikh. On behalf of BASE, I am here to welcome all the participants to the BASE online lecture series. And today's lecture number is 5. Today's topic is higher education in West Bengal, challenges of expansion and equal access. And our esteemed speaker is Dr. Khalid Khan, PhD from JNU, Assistant Professor, IIDS, New Delhi. On behalf of BASE, I am requesting Abdul Motin Saib, Assistant Professor of Jadavpur University, to chair the session. Motin bhai, now over to you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. First of all, a bit sorry for slightly late and due to internet problem. And unfortunately, my office also suddenly internet gone down. I'm using my mobile network connections. So sorry for that. Today, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah.
It is
Today,
like that.
as part of BASE lecture series, this is our fifth lecture on higher education in West Bengal, challenges of expansions and equal access. Friends, you know the debate of higher education is quite important, especially last couple of decades, especially the post Mandal thing. The issues of representation in higher education. So in the last couple of decades, we have also seen witnessed the issues of higher education in the form of three E's: the issues of expansion, the issues of equity, and excellence. And when we talk about higher education, it's not
Oh
higher
no.
education as an standalone subject or standalone themes. Is also related to our society, very much part of our the issues of inequality, the debates of group inequality, the sociological aspect of caste, the debate of class, the issues of gender, and issues of community, and our every sorts of indicators which basically restrict the access and equity in higher education. We have a couple of committee reports which has categorically shown the issues and concerns of higher education. If you look at the Virginia Zaza Committee for the Tribals in 2014, then in 2006 you have such a committee report, then again post such a evaluations report by Professor Kundu, then we have a diversity index report by the Minister of Minority Affairs. You have equal opportunity commissions, national knowledge commissions and their reports, and especially MHRD's FATMI committee on higher educations. And overall the data of All India Survey of Higher Educations, all data empirical evidence, NSSO, and all data which clearly categorically shows the issues and concerns, especially in the access and equity of higher education in India. Today we will be specifically talking about the state of West Bengal, which is an important in terms of many ways, and in terms of cultural thing, West Bengal considered as an enlightened and educated place. But we will see the facts and reality check also how far West Bengal universities or higher education in West Bengal are inclusive. If we just astonished to know the sort of the data. If you go back to the 90s or late 80s or early 90s, if you look at the pictures of higher education in West Bengal, for example, take the examples of North Bengal. In North Bengal right now, you have around 7 to 8 districts, right, from Darjeeling to Kalimpong, Kuch Bihar, Alipurduar, Jalpaiguri, Malda, parts of both Dinajpur, North and South. Only one university used to be there called North Bengal University, which is to cater the needs of the entire that zone. So now, if you look at the place like Birbhum or Bakura or Murshidabad, I think right now the only district which we don't have a full-fledged university functioning there. So in that sense, what are the issues of sociological aspects, the historical aspect, the issues of social exclusion, the issues of inclusion? And then I'll give you a data of All India Survey of Higher Education. In 1950 and 1951, there used to be only 0.4% of students enrolled in higher educations. Now that figure gone up to roughly around 25 to 26%, where I mean, like, lot of inclusive policies. But when Professor Thorat, I remember when Professor Thorat was there at the University Grant Commissions, a lot of schemes came up, like Maulana Azad National Fellowships or the Rajiv Gandhi National Fellowships for SC, ST, and OBC students. So now multiple fellowship, multiple scholarships, the inclusive approach of the educations and all. But I won't be taking much time with all these issues. I mean, the issues of pedagogy, the issues of affirmative actions, the issues of social justice, the issues of democratization of higher education and knowledge. All these issues need to be debated, academically, to understand the present status of the higher education in West Bengal. What are the challenges, especially in terms of expansions, and also in the context of equal access to different communities. With these few words, we have a very enlightening and young, bright, dedicated scholar who has done enormous amount of empirical studies with Professor Thorat. He's also one of the I know him, one of the student, famous student of Professor Thorat, Sukhdev Thorat at JNU. He has done his both MPhil and PhD from that from JNU, and he has done series of empirical studies in different parts of India, and he's specialized on economic of educations, on human capital, labor market, aging, and issues of inclusions. He has served currently he's assistant professor at Indian Institute of Dalit Studies, which itself is an eminent institute of research and contemporary research. And he has also served many places of higher education, including University of Delhi, Kirorimal College, and Jindal Global University, IEG, Institute of Economic Growth. With these few words, we are very privileged to have Dr. Khalid Khan, and I would request Dr. Khalid Khan, please go ahead with your, with your lecture, and then we will be happy to have later on, after your presentation, we'll have a very short span of question and answer sessions. With these few words, this is over to Dr. Khalid Khan. Khalid bhai, I think your is mute.
Yeah, thank you, Bes, and especially Matin bhai for inviting me for this lecture. And first, can I share my screen here?
Yeah, sure.
Is it visible, my presentation?
It's not visible right now. I think.
Now? Is presentation visible? Hello?
Yeah, as of now, it's not there, but.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Now?
Yes, sir, it is visible now. If you might have to, make it presentation mode.
Yes, it's visible. You can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So, uh, I'll be presenting on the issue of higher education in West Bengal, challenges of expansion in anti-poll access. So, before going to the technical details, I think I should introduce the issue, why this issue is important. When we, Matin Bhai has already introduced the issue actually, that the period basically before 2014 was the period of expansion of higher education. In fact, if we see the, the recent history of economic growth of Indian economy, then we see that the period after 2004 was the period of inclusive growth, because we have seen something interesting happening in Indian economy. And this is the period when the emphasis on education was given, particularly under the leadership of Professor Thorat, who was UGC chairman at that time. So the concept of social exclusion and inclusion came into existence in Indian academia during this period. When we talk about higher education, then the issue is important because with the modern economic growth, with the way, with the complexity of the production process, which we are seeing nowadays, higher education becomes very important. I am not denying the cultural value of higher education, but higher education is also a kind of investment. The way the Nobel winning economist told that expenditure on higher education is a kind of investment and it leads to return in terms of wage premium. It leads to higher income for the students who are getting it and who are enrolled in higher education. But interesting phenomena in India is that uh, higher education doesn't simply convert into higher income. Recently, what we are witnessing in Indian economy is that the expansion of higher education has taken place. The enrollment ratio of marginalized groups like scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, Muslims, and OBCs has increased during the period 2004 and 14. But this expansion was not accompanied with their improvement in the performance in labor market. The chance of getting employment was not as high as of upper caste or privileged or people coming from the privileged background. So the question which becomes very important uh, today is that one is that how equitable higher education today is. The second is if a student coming from a underprivileged background is getting higher education, does it guarantee the high quality employment in labor market? When we talk about any particular state, particularly today we are talking about West Bengal, the issue of expansion becomes important because uh, West Bengal is one of the worst performing states in India.
Sorry to interrupt.
Sorry.
Khalid sir, please, could you please share your screen again? Uh, uh, could you
Okay.
please share your screen again? It is not visible.
Is it visible now? Hello. Is it visible?
Hello? No, sir.
No.
No, sir.
Go ahead, Khalid bhai. Maybe later on, if possible, you can share the screen at least. Okay, yeah. Hmm.
Okay, okay.
Is it
Go
visible?
ahead.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Yes, now it is visible.
So that's why the issue of access is also very important in West Bengal because West Bengal is one of the worst performing state in terms of access to higher education. So the question which uh, I am trying to address today is that how West Bengal has performed during last 1 decades. The second issue is how inclusive higher education has been uh, in in West Bengal when we consider groups like social group and religious group, income group. The issue becomes important also from the point of view that recently we have seen 10% reservation for Muslim OBCs. So it will be very interesting to see whether that reservation has created any kind of impact on the access of OBCs or marginalized groups among Muslims or not. So I will try to address all these questions. My whole presentation will be is divided in three parts. In first part, I will discuss how West Bengal is placed when we compare the performance of the states across India and how West Bengal performs vis-a-vis the average performance of all India level. The second question is how equitable higher education is in West Bengal. And third question is whether inequality in access to higher education has reduced recently in the state or not. So, uh, I am sharing this table. This table is showing the general distribution of population in the state. So the source of this data is National Sample Survey. So it may be maybe 1% or 1.5%. It may differ from the census figure because we don't have census figure for the for latest period. Census is available for 2011. So I thought of sharing data from NSS. The most important feature of uh, the the demography of West Bengal is in terms of you can see the distribution of social group and religious group. Higher caste. If I can show the last column, which is total, then the share of higher caste in total population is 53%. Unlike all average figure of all India level, where 28% of the population belongs to higher caste according to the NSS data, in West Bengal it is 53%. Scheduled caste, they constitute 27%, which is higher than all India average. Scheduled tribes almost close to the all India's figure, but OBC are very actually they are the least populated group in the state. They are 14% of total population. When we divide the whole population by religious group, then again Muslims, another marginalized groups of India, they are 27% of state population, whereas they are 14.2% of total population of India. So they are their population is higher than that of almost double of their all India average. Another interesting actually feature of the population of this state is in terms of the rural urban distribution of the population. What we see that the marginalized groups like scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, and OBC, other backward caste, they are highly concentrated in rural areas. For example, scheduled tribes, they are 92%. 92% of their population are living in rural areas. Only 8% of their population are in urban area. For scheduled caste, it is 79%, means almost 80%. If we see the state average, it is 70%. At all India level, also the the share is the same, 70% in rural area and 30% in urban area. So if we see by social groups, then we can clearly see that SC, ST, and OBC, they are highly concentrated in rural areas, and others, which is actually I have used this other as a proxy for non-SC, ST, OBC. That is, we can say higher caste. They are 40% in urban area, which is higher than the all state average. So again, if we see Muslim Hindu distribution of the population, then 78% of total population of Muslims are in rural areas. So the first lesson which we get from the population distribution is that the concentration of marginalized groups is higher in rural areas. And being in urban area is a kind of advantage, as we know that the chance of getting into higher education or chance of getting good quality of job is higher in urban area. So we can say that this is the first step of disadvantage which marginalized groups suffers. Now, this slide is showing the distribution of population. Actually, what I have done in this, I'm just, maybe it is difficult to understand if you are seeing this table, so I am explaining it. What I have done, that I have distributed the whole population of India into different states. What is the share of different states uh, in total enrollment in total attendance in higher education, and the second column, which is showing 18 to 29. Actually, 18 to 29 is the population in this age group. we generally assume, even NSS also assumes that the goal attendance in education takes place in the age group between 5 to 29, and the age group 18 to 29 is considered as a as the age group for attending higher education, college and universities. So I have compared the share of West Bengal, share of different states in 18 to 29 years population with the share of that particular state in total attendance in higher education. Means what percentage of students are attending higher education of total attendance of all India level. For example, if we see West Bengal, 6.5, this figure 6.5. This means out of total attendance in higher education, West Bengal is comprising 6.5%. Means if 100 students are attending higher education in all India, then 6.5% will belong to West Bengal. But out of total population in 18 to 29, West Bengal constitutes 7.6%. This means that West Bengal constitutes higher share of the population demand who may demand higher education, but their share in attendance is lower. So there is a gap between, you can say that, the kind of uh, population who should be in higher education and the population who are actually in higher education. And this, the third column, this is showing the gap. So all the negative signs like minus 2.6 for Bihar, Assam minus 0.89, West Bengal minus 1.1. So these are the states, they are not performing according to their share in population. So West Bengal belongs to those kinds of states. There are total almost 9 states who are actually not performing well in this, uh, according to this data, and West Bengal belongs to that category. This table, so after seeing that how much share the West Bengal is actually comprising in total attendance in higher education, I am showing attendance rate in higher education. Attendance rate, actually it is simply the percentage of population in 18 to 23 years. 18 to 23 years is considered the right age of being in higher education. Even MHRD also takes this age group as the appropriate age for attending higher education. Means those who are attending college and universities. So 20% of the total population in 18 to 23 years are attending higher education in West Bengal. If we see all India figure, it is 24.3%. So West Bengal is underperforming with respect to all India performance. And if we compare West Bengal with other states, then we find that West Bengal is ranked 16 among 23 major states. Kerala is the top performer, where 40% of the total population in 18 to 23 years are attending higher education. And again, Assam, Jharkhand, these states are the worst performer. Bihar, what we can say at most for West Bengal is that West Bengal is better performing among poor states of India. In fact, West Bengal is performing better than the states in East India also. But if we compare it from northern state or South Indian states, then it is actually not performing well. This is the another factor. Actually, I should give a background for this to this slide particularly, privatization, because when we are talking about expansion, when the policy makers started talking about expansion of higher education, the question which was very important, actually it is still debated issue, who should take a lead in expansion of higher education, whether government should come forward or a private sector should take a lead in expanding higher education. So what happened that we know that the foreign university bill and private universities bill, they are still in pipeline in parliament. They are not yet passed. But actually, the window for privatization is open from the state legislature. If we see the figure of the number of private universities, we will find that all the private universities in India are state private universities. Even universities like O.P. Jindal and Srinagar, these are all state private universities. These are not central private universities because there is no uh, act for private university at central level. So at policy level, we can say that we don't have the government doesn't support privatization unequivocally because of criticism and because of the conviction of the basically researchers, you can say the academic circle and activists, that government should take a lead because the government expansion is inclusive expansion, and if expansion takes place through privatization, then it will lead to exclusion of the marginalized groups. But the interesting phenomena, which is actually evident from the data, is that the states where the share of privatization is very high, the the attendance rate is also high, with the exception of states like Himachal Pradesh. Even in Kerala, which is performing best among the states, the share of private unaided institutions, that is self-financed institution, is 39%, while the all India share of private unaided institution is 29%. This means out of total attendance taking place in higher education, 29% is coming from self-financed private universities and colleges. But this figure in West Bengal is very low. This is 7.6%. So which way West Bengal will go or it should go, it is a debatable issue. But expansion of higher education in West Bengal is urgently needed. And one of the factors which may actually invite criticism from the proponents of policy makers is that the share of private unaided institution, the proponents of privatization, those who support privatization, they may tell you that the share of private unaided institution is very low in the state. So the state is performing very low. But we have states like Himachal Pradesh also. Himachal Pradesh is also actually one of the best performing state, but the share of unaided institution is 12.7%. Means very low, far lower than all India average. So again, actually I have not shared the table here. If we decompose, if we disaggregate the total attendance in higher education by courses, the interesting feature of attendance in West Bengal is that the share of humanities is very high. It is around 70% of total attendance. And if we see this share at all India level, this is somewhere 40%, 35%. It varies by, maybe in some state it is 30% also. So the share of courses like science and commerce is very low in West Bengal, particularly commerce. So diversification of courses is also very important aspect, which I think the policymakers in this state should think about. Now, I am coming to the input variables. Actually, when we are talking about the attendance rate and the percentage of students attending higher education, then merely increasing the number of students is actually it doesn't translate into good quality higher education. Increasing the number of colleges and teachers is also equally important. So this slide is showing two tables. The upper table is the number of colleges in West Bengal. This is from All India Survey on Higher Education and India. Actually, I have compared the number of colleges and of West Bengal and India, and then I have shown how the number of colleges has increased over the period between 2010 and 16 in West Bengal and India. One important feature of higher education in West Bengal is continuously increasing number and share of colleges. So the third third row, which is, for example, for 2010-11, it is 2.6%. This means out of total colleges in India, West Bengal is constituting 2.6% colleges. This share has increased to 3%. So, and if we see the growth, then the growth was 16% during this period. This means uh, during these 6 years, the 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 share of colleges in the state has increased by 16%. So we can say that the number of colleges has increased, the share of colleges has increased. But when we come to, again, we come to, if we come to teacher, again the same thing is evident that the number of teachers has increased. 2011-12, 41,000 teachers, almost 41,000 teachers were there in West Bengal. It has increased to 48,000 in 16-17. The share has also increased from 3.3% to 3.6%. So in this regard, we can say that the state is performing good and it is increasing its share with respect to all India average. But when we come to the availability of colleges, when we come to the pressure of students on colleges, or the pressure of number of students on teachers, then we find that state is not performing very well. So the period between 2010 and 16, this period is of course the period of growth in terms of number of colleges, number of teachers in the state, and but I, so the availability of college has also increased. This slide is showing the first upper one is showing number of colleges. This is showing availability of colleges, means per lakh population how much colleges are available. So, for example, in West Bengal in 2010-11, 8 colleges were available for 1 lakh population. This has increased to 11 colleges in 16-17. At all India level, it has increased from 23 to 28%. So if we compare the availability of colleges between West Bengal and India, the difference is more than double. So if for all India level in 16-17, 11 colleges, 28 colleges were available for 1 lakh population, but in West Bengal it is available, 11 colleges are available. So the increasing the number of colleges, availability of colleges is still required in the state. Average enrollment per college. This is another important actually limitation of the higher education in the state. The average number of enrollment is very high, almost double. So, for example, in 2016-17, at all India level, 659. This is average enrollment. Means per colleges, almost 700, you can say. Students were enrolled on an average at all India level. But in West Bengal, it was 1323. So it is double. And this is happening because the enrollment has increased, but the number of colleges has not increased commensurately. Though it has increased, but it has not increased as per the requirement. But this gap is actually, we can't say that it has appeared recently. It is coming from the past. In 2010-11 also, the state was not performing very well, both in terms of average enrollment per college and availability of college as well. So if we have less number of college, if we have less number of teacher and enrollment is increasing, then it is natural that the population of students per teacher will increase. So there is an indicator which is called pupil teacher ratio, means number of students per teacher in a college. So two types of actually figure are shown in this table: regular plus distance taken together and regular courses. West Bengal, India. Difference. This bold two columns are showing the difference between West Bengal and India. So if we see, for example, I am seeing regular courses, then in 2016-17 per teacher, they 38 students were there for one teacher. But at all India level, this was 22%. So gap was 16%. Means one teacher in West Bengal will have to take care of 16 extra students compared to all India average. But and so far what we have seen that the state has improved its performance during the period between 2010 and 16. But in terms of this indicator, the state has not improved its performance. Actually, uh, it has done it has we can see the number has increased from 34 to 38%. So increase in this case is not improvement; it is actually worsening the situation. So the burden of students on teacher has increased, and this is showing that the number of teacher has not increased commensurately with the increasing attendance. So the one thing is that the number of students should increase because state is not performing as par with at par with the all India average, and if we compare with northern state and southern states. But the number of teachers, availability of college should also increase. Otherwise, mere increasing the number of students will create further burden on the colleges and teachers, and it will deteriorate the quality of higher education. So, so far, this was the actually the performance of the state vis-a-vis the all India level. Now, this part, the second part, I am coming to the question of equal access. How equitable is higher education in West Bengal? So, in this case, I will show three factors: social group, religious group, and income groups. So, again, the indicator for measurement is attendance rate, the percentage of population in 18 to 23 age group who are in higher education, means maybe in college or university, graduate and above courses. So the state at this figure 20, the the attendance rate for the state is 20%, but all India figure is 24.3%. So state is not performing better than the all India figure. But if we decompose it by social group, ST, SC, OBC, so the interesting thing is that OBC, they are performing better than the state average. OBC are 22% and state average is 20%. And others who are higher caste, kind of proxy for higher caste, they are not performing. They are slightly better than state average, but we can't tell that the conventional kind of hierarchy is taking place in the state. But SCs are not performing well. If we compare SC from state average, they are less. Again, they are less than OBC and higher caste also. If we compare these groups with their counterparts at all India level, means how SC, ST, and OBC and upper caste are placed in West Bengal compared to their counterparts at all India level, then what we see, it is very interesting that 20 for higher caste in West Bengal, the attendance rate is 21%, but at all India level it is 32%. So higher caste in West Bengal are also not performing. Actually, they are not performing as much as the higher caste at all India level. And but OBCs, they are close to their counterparts at all India level. 22% of OBCs are yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Sir, I cannot see your slide. Can you share it again?
Is it visible? Is it visible? Hello.
No, no,
Not yet.
Hello. Hello.
no, no, no. It's not visible. It's not visible.
You go ahead and in between, if possible, then like
Yeah.
so this thing.
Hmm.
Now,
Yeah, yeah,
It
yeah.
was
Fine now.
sorry,
visible?
sorry to interrupt. It was visible to us. I think there are some problems with Isras Ali. Okay, so you can share it again. Thank you.
Okay.
There must be some technical problem. Khalid, you go ahead. I mean, just state the figure so that we'll understand, even though we don't have slides.
Yes. So, uh, if we see the aggregate performance of social groups, then SCs, OBCs, they are actually they are performing at par with their counterparts at all India level. But higher caste, their attendance rate is very low compared to their counterparts at all India level. But the interesting thing is that if we disaggregate uh, the performance by rural and urban area, then just a minute. Yeah. So if you disaggregate the performance by rural and urban area, then the disparity appears actually. But again, the interesting phenomena is that the OBCs actually they are the best performer in the state. 44% of OBCs are attending higher education in the state uh, in urban area, but this figure is 37% for higher caste, which is higher than the overall average figure of all India level. So in urban higher caste in West Bengal, they are performing better than the average performance of higher caste. And the average figure of the urban West Bengal is 36%. So, um, but if we compare the performance in urban area with rural area, then what we find that the kind of rural distress is taking place in the state. We know that the share of rural area is actually 70% of population are in rural areas, but the performance of rural area is very low. In urban area, 36% of the population are attending higher education, but in urban area, this is 14%. If we see by social group, then 13% of scheduled tribe, 13% of scheduled caste, 15% of OBC, and 14% of higher caste are attending higher education. So there is no much disparity by social group also in rural area. So, but if we compare the performance of the inequality by social group with all India level, then one thing is very clear that both in urban area and rural area, the the disparity by social group is lower in West Bengal compared to all India level. Now I'm coming to religious group, Muslims. Basically, Muslims they are constituting almost 28% of total population, but they are not performing well when we compare them with all India level, or when we compare their performance with state performance. 15% of total population, 15% of total population among Muslims are in higher education, while the all India average is 20%. For Hindu, it is 23%. So clear cut display. For Hindu, 23% are in higher education. For Muslims, 15% in higher education. But among Muslim also there is rural-urban disparity. 12% of Muslims are in rural area are in higher education, but 23% are in higher education in urban area. So double uh, of the if we compare the performance of urban and rural area, then the performance of Muslim doubles when we come to urban areas. So one thing is evident from this figure is that focus on rural areas urgently needed, and it is needed for everyone, for every social group and religious group also. But a special focus on marginalized groups, of course, scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, and Muslims is needed in urban areas, because though uh, Marginalized groups are also performing better in urban areas, but their performance is far lower than the privileged group. For example, Hindus, 41% of Hindus are in higher education in urban area, but 23% of Muslims are in higher education. So, but again, if we compare the disparity between Hindu and Muslim with respect to all India level, then the the state is slightly performing better. The Hindu-Muslim disparity is lower in West Bengal compared to all India level. But but the interesting thing is that the question which is very important, which should strike in our mind is why upper caste actually they are lagging, or why OBCs are performing better than upper caste at aggregate level. The answer to this question comes from the desegregation of social and social group by religion. If we desegregate by upper caste by Hindu Muslim, OBC Hindu Muslim, then the conventional disparity appears. Uh, for example, if I could show this figure, is my slide visible now? Hello.
Yeah,
It was visible. Now again, gone
it was.
back.
Okay. Because this table is very important. That's why I want. Is it visible now?
No. Yeah, it's now coming up.
It's coming. It's coming.
Visible.
Yeah, it is visible. You can click the hide button also.
So
Hide button beside the stop sharing.
yeah, fine. So this table is showing the desegregation of attendance rate by socio-religious group. So this vertically we are seeing the social group, and horizontally we are seeing religion. The first three columns are for 2017 and last three columns are for 2014. So the interesting actually observation from this table is basically this row. For upper caste, for higher caste Hindu, the attendance rate is 30%. But for higher caste Muslims, it is 11% only, 10.6%, close to 11%. So the whole disparity which we are seeing in terms of social group, that others higher caste were performing as much as OBC, or then it was because of the low performance of Muslim higher caste. For Hindus, again we can see the conventional disparities existing. The lowest is for ST, followed by SC, OBC, higher caste. For Muslims, we can't consider these two figures because the sample is very low and their population is low. That's why it's not reliable. Now, so I'm coming to OBC and others. Higher caste OBCs are 24% in higher education, but others, means higher caste of Muslims, they are 11%. But the question arises, why this is happening? Why OBCs among Muslims are performing better than higher caste among Muslims? One of the factors may be economic condition, which generally we can expect, uh, which happens with conventional higher caste hierarchy. But but in this case, actually, uh, NSS data for seeing the economic condition, what I have done, I have shown the figure of average consumption expenditure, which is used as a kind of approximate figure for showing the economic condition of any group. So for Muslims, if we see the consumption expenditure of OBC and others, these two figures, these are almost close. Actually, for higher caste, it is slightly higher actually, 1822. So it is very interesting to see that the consumption expenditure of higher caste Muslim is slightly higher, but their presence in higher education is far lower than OBC. And this is happening because I think one probable reason for this may be the the recent OBC reservation, because for this I have compared the figure from 2014. For 2014, again, these bold two numbers in last second column, 11.2% and 8.2%. These two figures. 11 for OBC Muslims in 2014, only 11% of the population were attending higher education, 18 to 23 years population. For higher caste Muslims, it was 2%. There was not much disparity in OBC and higher caste Muslims in 2014, but this disparity has suddenly increased in 2017, because the attendance among higher caste did not actually expand as much as it happened in the case of OBC. So, so one of the factors I think, but I have not done any kind of research on this recent reservation. But this is a research question. We should study how whether this is happening due to the recent reservation policy, because attendance it shows the recently attending population. So any kind of affirmative action will immediately be reflected in attendance figure. Now I'm coming to the income disparity by income group. For showing disparity by income group, what I have done, I have divided the whole population into 5 groups. So these are 5 groups. 0 to 20% means this shows the population according to increasing income. So last 20% population between those having in between 20 to 40% income group, then 40 to 60%. So we can call it the top 20% population, 18 to 100, and 0 to 20 is the bottom most 20% population. So again, in this case, what we see that the state is performing worse than all India level, particularly for the groups belonging to the poor section. Last 20% population, 0 to 20. So only 4.9% of this population was in high, but this is 11.3% at all India. You can see every figure actually they are worst performance in terms of higher education. But the elite section of the state, they are performing in fact better than all India level also. For example, top 20% population, they are 52% of the population, more than half are in higher education. But this figure for all India level is only 54. Again, if we decompose it by rural, this 52% increases to 56%. In fact, 57%. But at all India level, it is 46%. So, 20% population, they are best performers. And so, this is showing the coefficient of equality. This is actually the gap of a particular group with respect to overall share of overall performance of the state. So, if this number is increasing, this means the gap is reducing. What we find that the top groups, they are far better than state level. This is 2.98, means 3 times higher attendance rate for top 20% population in West Bengal. For all India level, it is 2 times. So again, what actually I am trying to convey is that the elite section, economically elite section are actually performing far better than all India average, despite the overall state performance is far lower than all India average. So, and the second thing which is very important is that rural areas, they are actually, we can say that a kind of rural distress is happening in terms of, if we see the performance in terms of higher education. So these two factors are very important. Marginalized groups, of course, special focus is needed, particularly in urban areas. They are lagging behind the elite section. So with this part is, and the last part is recent trend. So the last question, which actually I'm trying to address, is how the state has performed during the last 1 decade. Because the available data is for 2017, and for last 2 decades, 2007 is the last actually survey happened in for education. That's why I have taken the period between 2007 and 17. So again, this period between 14 to 17, this period is period of stagnation. When we talk about higher education, no expansion of higher education has taken place, neither at state level nor at all India level. So post 2014 period was a period of stagnation when we are considering the higher education. So for example, at all India level, only 24% of the population are in higher education in 2017, and it was 24% in 2014 also. No increase. And if we compare it with 2007, then we see that the share has doubled. So whole increase has taken place between 2007 and 14. Same is true for West Bengal also. Uh, the the attendance rate has doubled during this period, but no increase during 2014 and 17. So if we see the performance of uh, social groups for rural areas, no during 14-17 no increase, but 7-14 of course there was increase. In rural areas it was total GER was 6% in 2007. It increased to 14% almost. Urban areas also increased, but again now we can see that higher caste, which is others, they are best performer in urban area, but in a rural area there is no much disparity by social groups. So now this is religious group. Religious group, we can see that if we see 2007, so the presence of Muslims was negligible. In fact, only you can say that only 2 of out of 100 were Muslim when we see the figure of 2007, and this was equally true for rural and urban both. But in 2014, this 2 has increased to 7 in rural areas, and in urban areas it has increased to 15. So for Muslims also, urban areas, their performance has improved, but again they are lagging far behind their Hindu counterparts, both in urban areas and rural areas in 2014. But in 2017, their performance has actually improved when we consider Muslims, both in urban areas and rural areas. Why it has happened? Maybe again because of one of the reason, maybe OBC reservation. Other reason maybe, of course, the kind of scholarship, and this may be also a factor. But the increase of Muslim share in higher education during this period, 9 to 13, this did not translate into the increase in the performance of the state. So, and this is showing the performance by income group. By income group, again, we see that the increase actually it has taken place during the period 2007 and 14, but no such increase means there is no very significant any significant increase during period during 2004 and 14 and 17. Actually, in some cases, it has reduced also. So, but again, if we compare it with all India level, then we can see that the poorest are performing worse than all India level, but the richest are performing better than all India average. This figure actually, this is again coefficient of equality. This number are showing the performance of the state over the time. So increase in the number shows that equality, if increase is taking place for marginalized groups, this is showing that the inequality is reducing. For example, SC. In 2007, it was 0.62%. 62 means with respect to, if it is 1, this means that the group is performing equal to the state average. So it has increased to 0.73%. So performance of SC has improved between 7 and 14 and 17 also. OBCs, they are performing better than state average in 2017, but this has happened recently. So in one way, we can say that the inequality by social group has reduced. So the performance of Muslims has improved, but again they are still lagging. The marginalized groups are lagging the behind the privileged groups. So this is for Muslim. The Hindu-Muslim inequality, we can see that it has reduced over the time. This number is increasing actually. So the distance has reduced, but Muslims are still far lower than their Hindu counterparts. This is for income group. Income group, again for poorest section, very actually negligible increase we can see in some cases. For example, bottom 20% they are still not performing that much. At top 20% they are performing far better than. Though the disparity by income group has also reduced, but it is very high even in 2017. So this is the summary. We can summarize like this: West Bengal is lagging far behind other states, and but it is performing better than poor states like the states of East India, where Bihar, Jharkhand, Odisha, these states. Government sector dominates in higher education and negligible share of unaided institutions. Number of college has increased, number of teachers has increased, but this increase was not actually it did not match with the increase in the number of students. So the pressure of students on college and burden on teachers has increased over the time. So increasing the number of college in terms of availability and number of teachers is very important. Expansion of higher education, it is important because it is lagging far behind better performing states. For example, Kerala, it is half. So again, caste disparity, of course, caste disparity is relatively lower than all India level, but in rural areas, everyone is actually lagging behind, and so focus on rural area is needed. But marginalized groups in urban areas, they are worst performer, CST and Muslims. OBCs are performing better than Hindus, but if we disaggregate the figure, we see that Muslim OBCs are performing good recently during last 3 years. So class disparity is very sharper. So if we see the intersection of class and religion and class and caste, then it will be very interesting to see what happens to marginalized groups like SC, and Muslims. So again, Hindu-Muslim disparity is lower compared to all India average. It has reduced also, but still Muslims are far behind their Hindu counterparts. Sharp disparity by income group. So what we can say that the period between 7 and 14 was the period of expansion, and some inclusion has taken place during the recent period also, but still the gap is very high. Thank you.
Thank you. You're done, Khalid?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. I mean, like many of our viewers must be, listening all this data and all, but this is really very, informative. I mean, in terms of ranking states, looking West Bengal from the Indian perspective, or looking India from the perspective of West Bengal, both vice versa. So in this way, I mean, of course, if I would like to sum up, there has been a lot of schemes and scholarship programs and implementation of various other, school education's enrollment has gone up. That could be one of the reasons, but also the issues of OBC reservation is also playing a very important role as far as enrollment of higher education among the social group has gone up much. Having said that, I would just like to point out a few more things regarding expansion of higher education in West Bengal. If you look at the data, let's start from Kuch Bihar, right? Kuch Bihar, Jalpaiguri, Alipurdwar, Dinajpur, Malda, Murshidabad, Birbhum, Bardhaman. Then you come to Nadia, Kolkata, South 24 Parganas, North, South, and I mean, if you look at the geographical map with the understanding of sociology, the Calcutta University has its own history. Jadavpur, Calcutta Presidency, these are the elite institutions which have a different kind of history. I'm not going to that. But if you look at the post-colonial universities, like the university which started after independence, if you look at which it is, Kalyani University, Vidyasagar, Medinipur, Kalyani, Vidyasagar, North Bengal University, these are the universities which started in 60s, 70s and late 80s. which I mean, after that, from late 80s to early 2000s, you have seen an absolutely you know almost a zero expansion in higher education. I mean, why I'm
Yes.
emphasizing on this subject, because West Bengal, I mean, if you look at Purulia, the performance of Purulia, or maybe the Birbhum, I mean, though we have a central university there, Vishwabharati, but in spite of having central university, the issues of the access to education is not, I mean, like not percolated among the marginalized sections over there in Birbhum itself. So what I could find out, this is quite sociologically complex, economically different, and agrarian society, lower caste. I mean, largely even among the Muslims, you have majority of them are from sociologically belongs to lower caste, and then the combination of caste, combination of regional inequality, and of course the entire the debate of higher education in West Bengal has not taken which was started much earlier after post Mandal in Delhi, maybe in North India, which has not taken much
Yes.
impact in this part of Bengal, maybe because of different kind of politics. So with these things, I would like to open. There are a few questions which are coming up. One by Farhad Naz is arguing that you have shown West Bengal enrollment is higher for humanities compared to science. Why it is so? Why humanities in West Bengal is higher compared to science? And before handing over mic to Khalid Saab, just I would like to point here another important
Yes.
report by GT and SNAP, Association SNAP. They have come up with a very empirically solid rooted report in 2014, which is published again in 2016, I guess, about the living realities of Muslims in West Bengal, with taking the indicators of education and health, gender, and economic indicators. So there they have shown that how different districts are performing poor in compared to districts which are close to Kolkata. Like Bardhaman could be a bit exception. Majority of the districts which are far away from Calcutta, they are very poor in terms of quality educations. Having science stream or facilities of lab, teacher-student ratio is much worse in the rural Bengal. Maybe in a few urban slums as well, but generally in rural Bengal is absolutely pathetic. So this is a question by Farhad, that why science is compared to science you see higher enrollment in humanities.
Actually, the reason for this is actually the structure of economy itself. Um, the point where from I started my presentation, that expenditure on education is a kind of investment. So when a student join higher education, they see the probability of getting job and getting higher income from that degree. When we see mm, the opportunities for the job opportunities for maybe different disciplines, what we find that, for example, if we compare with good performing states of South India, like Andhra Pradesh or Tamil Nadu, so the kind of growth is taking place, which is taking place in India, is interesting. It is lopsided growth, and it is actually the private sector is dominating this growth by increasing role of IT sector, the increasing role of MNCs, corporate sectors, and when these sectors come into play in any state, the role of alternative courses like maybe diploma or engineering, science, commerce, for example, commerce. What are the scopes for commerce? Maybe accountant, company secretariat, ICWA. The question is, when corporate sector is existing, when MNCs is existing in a state, then the scope for this discipline increases. So when we are talking about the demand for higher education, the we should see the structure of employment. We see the scope for employment after getting the degree. The kind of I can say, if I can use this hard word, mania with government job, which happens with the students in East India, like Bihar and West Bengal. For example, what are the scopes for being in higher education in West Bengal? largely being a school teacher or being a college teacher. So that's why if someone is thinking about doing engineering or MBA or diploma, then they have to think to migrate to other states. That's why this is evident from the performance in terms of migration also. West Bengal is actually if we compare the number of those migrating out of the states and coming into the states for job, then we find that West Bengal is sending more than they are inviting students from other states. So the reason again, what I can say that the scope for job, humanities demand for maybe teaching jobs, maybe one of the reasons, or like civil services. These are the scopes uh, for being in higher education. That's why I think the structure is lopsided. So if we want to diversify the course structure in higher education, the diversification of economy is also important. What way it will take place? It may. I'm not actually. I'm not advocating increasing role of private sector or
Uh, Khalid bhai, someone has muted your speaker. Could you please unmute yourself?
yeah.
Okay.
So diversification of job is the main reason I think.
Okay, fair enough. There are a few other questions as well, but I think we are also running out of time. But there are questions which is also showing that by Israel Ali. Can you please share the information about the ranking? I mean, if later on, if you could share your information, we'll pass it to us speak audiences. Also, there's a questions by why OBC Muslims are doing well, but not general category. Is there any reasons? Enlighten the fact. I mean, like, there's a question posed by Israj Ali. Why OBC Muslims are doing well, but not in general, not general category. Anyway.
See, the first thing is we have to see the methodology, how NSF identifies social group. Basically, this is self-reported data. Actually, the interviewer asked the person what social group you belong to. So that's why it will be difficult to actually conclude that maybe someone is holding OBC degree on paper, but that person is considering himself upper caste. So I'm not denying the fact that the conventional hierarchy is taking place. It takes place in the community. And West Bengal is very interesting case also because that most of the caste, most of the social group among Muslims are in OBC. Why they are performing, OBCs are performing well? For this, I have done actually, I've shared the slide also, that if we compare the economic condition of OBC and higher caste Muslims, there is not much difference. Higher caste are actually slightly better off than OBCs. But the increase of OBC of GR among OBC has taken place during the period between 2014 and 17. And so if we consider 14 and 17 period, then two things maybe we can see that one is the government support, which was actually again the way Professor Thorat and the way UPA one actually they tried to expand higher education by offering more scholarships. One of the factors may be scholarship and support expansion of higher education itself, which has taken place at national level. The second factor is OBC reservation. Due to this, OBC is actually their performance has improved. But I have not done any research on this already. It needs actually a scientific study before concluding that this is happening because of 10% reservation.
Thank you. If there are any other questions, then we will sum up and we'll conclude these sessions. And we have another very interesting program in 5th of July at 7:30 onwards by Dr. Musharraf Hussain Khan. He is right now with OP Jindal Global University and he has PhD from New York. So we'll have another session on 5th of July. With these words, I just put up 3 important points why you see West Bengal pictures is slightly improving. apart from UPA1 scholarship schemes and all those, they're also in post-Sachar phenomena in Bengal and post-2006 phenomena. You have seen a massive mobilizations of different Muslims missionary schools, like the important name would be Al Amin missions and Maulana Azad Academy. And this is basically has become a kind of a movement also. It has also played a very important role in boosting up, especially in enrollment in higher education, especially in engineering and medical colleges. Apart from that, also the new universities which came up in Kuch Bihar, like Panchanan Burma University, Bankura University, or Gaurbanga University in Malda, Sidhu Khan University in Purulia, or Diamond Harbour Women University in South 24 Parganas, or if you there are, but still Murshidabad has left that place. There is no single university in Murshidabad right now. Hopefully that will come up soon. And then this expansion also played quite an important role in the enrollment of higher educations. And with these words, we would like to thank on behalf of BASE, and personally I would like to thank Dr. Khalid Khan for enlightening ourselves, especially with a lot of empirical data and evidences from NSS and your own research and your own observations and insights. I'm sure that BASE will come up with this kind of more fruitful and enlightening lectures in coming days. With these few words, I would like to thank Dr. Khalid Khan for enlightening us, and I'm sure that maybe next time we'll also accept our invite and enlighten ourselves. In maybe all India figure, and later on maybe would enlighten ourselves. With this word, now I'm concluding this and handing over to Hassan Dhabak, the PhD scholar at University of Kalyani, as also part of BASE team. Thank you. Could you please unmute yourself, Mr. Hassan Bhai? Uh, there is some technical problem, I guess. What I know, what you would like to do is that you would going to propose vote of thanks to us. So let us ourselves propose vote of thanks to ourselves, and we are concluding this program with again thanking all our audience, those who are joined from different parts. I could see from Moradabad, from Hyderabad, from Bangalore, from Malta, all across India. So hopefully next 5th of July, please do join us with us another important conversation with Dr. Musharraf Khan. He's a young, very dedicated scholars on English literature, and he will go to enlighten ourselves he will be in conversation with Mr. Hassan Dhabak. Both are the scholars of English literature. With these words, on behalf of BASE, I would like to thank all of you. Thank you so much, and see you on 5th of July again.
Thank you.